In a bustling city, a humble cashier named Emma performs an unexpected act of kindness, unknowingly igniting a chain of events that will transform a fractured family forever. On an ordinary day at the grocery store, Brian stood at the checkout, his heart racing as the cashier swiped his card for the third time. Each decline felt like a tightening knot in his stomach, worry creasing his brow. He began to sheepishly search through his pocket for coins, feeling the weight of judgment from the line behind him. The fluorescent lights above seemed to grow harsher, amplifying his embarrassment. Emma, the cashier, noticed his distress from her vantage point. There was something about the way his shoulders hunched in defeat, and the anxious glances he cast around the room that tugged at her heart. She leaned slightly toward him, a warm smile on her face that belied the urgency of the situation. Quietly, she decided to cover the difference, swiping her employee discount card with a confidence she didn't feel. Internal conflict stirred within Brian. This small kindness sent waves of nostalgia through him. As he gathered his groceries, flashes of memory flickered in his mind. He saw the sprawling, manicured lawns of his childhood home, and the clinking of champagne glasses during family gatherings filled with laughter and warmth. Yet beneath those golden moments lay shadows cast by a family business scandal that had spiraled into a bitter betrayal, leaving him isolated. The warmth of a loving family had soured into the chilly air of resentment and financial greed. He shook himself free from the memories as Emma scanned each item, her focus unwavering, but her mind whirling with the emotions radiating from him. Sensing his unease, she used the brief pauses between items to steal glances at his face, her compassion sharpening her observation. It was hard to ignore the invisible barriers of class disparity that lingered in the air, thickening the atmosphere with every unspoken word. Their fleeting moments of eye contact ignited something within her, not merely sympathy, but a genuine curiosity about the life that had led him to this point. How did it come to this? Brian wondered, staring at the pristine checkout line that once felt so familiar, yet now seemed unrecognizable. He felt twinges of anger, disappointment, and a profound sense of loss for what he used to have. As he finished gathering the last of his bags, he cast one last glance at Emma, the stranger who had unexpectedly reached out to him, albeit in a small way. With each step toward the exit, he could feel the seed of change that her kindness had planted in his heart. The thoughts of his past and the burdens of his current reality mixed and churned, creating an anticipation that he couldn't quite place. Emma watched him leave, a quiet hope blooming within her. There was something about that encounter, a connection that ran deeper than the moment allowed. She wondered if it was just the cashier's role to serve, or if she might actually make a difference in someone's life. As the door swung shut behind Brian, she felt the weight of unspoken possibilities hanging in the air, hinting at an unraveling story she could hardly wait to discover. Brian slumped into the booth at the local cafe, the soothing aroma of brewed coffee doing little to ease the storm brewing inside him. Shadows of betrayal clung to his words as he recounted the night's encounter to his best friend, Tom. "I just don't get it," he said, his fingers trembling around his cup. "Why can't my family just be there for me when I need them most? It's like I'm invisible to them." The bitterness seeped through his voice, leaving a sour taste that he found hard to swallow. Tom leaned forward, concern etched on his face. "Have you talked to them? Maybe they don't realize how you're feeling." Brian shook his head, frustration spilling over. "I shouldn't have to. They should know, especially my dad. It's like he's always more concerned with his business than with us." A wave of emotion surged within him as memories of past interactions flooded his mind. Moments laden with disappointment that dug deeper than he cared to acknowledge. "Sometimes I feel like I don't even belong in my own family." Meanwhile, at the store, Emma's instincts pulsed with curiosity. She had sensed the unspoken tension that hung around Brian like a heavy fog. As she meticulously processed a customer's order, she caught sight of Brian's mother in a heated exchange with a man in a crisp suit. Thompson, their family lawyer. Their voices, low but sharp, cut through the murmur of the cafe, drawing Emma's attention like a moth to a flame. "It's not your decision to make, Claire. You can't just ignore the trust fund issues," Mr. Thompson insisted, his brow furrowed in agitation. "It's not just about the money," Claire shot back, her voice trembling with barely contained anger. "You don't understand what we're going through. This is about the family." Emma's heart raced at the implications of their words. A mismanaged trust fund? What was being hidden beneath the surface of this seemingly privileged family? She felt an unsettling curiosity bubbling within her, contrasting sharply with her sense of morality. How could a life filled with so much wealth hold such heartache and discord? After the customers had left, Emma reflected on these puzzling revelations during her quiet moments at the register. With every smile she exchanged and every small kindness she offered, she began to see the facade of normalcy painted over the lives around her. Today it was a child craving attention from a distracted parent. Tomorrow it could be a couple struggling to make ends meet. The social divides ran deeper than she realized, all tangled in a web of human emotion she was learning to navigate. As she was learning to navigate, worked, empathy blossomed within her. She felt charged with the desire to peel back the layers of Brian's story. Why did he seem so different from those who wandered into her world? What complexities lay behind the warmth of his smile? Connection was stirring, though it remained shrouded in uncertainty and challenge. The day wore on, and as she wiped down the countertop, Emma's mind wandered back to Brian's turmoil. Was her kindness merely a surface-level distraction from the deeper issues he faced? She grappled with the idea that what she had to offer seemed so insignificant when pitted against the weight of his family's struggles. What if her small acts of compassion had the potential to create ripples for change, not just in her life, but in Brian's as well? As the sun dipped lower, casting shadows in the empty cafe, Emma felt an unsettling knot tighten in her chest. The threads of their lives were beginning to intertwine, and uncertainty loomed just ahead. Would her efforts truly matter in the face of his family's turmoil? She stood at the precipice, pondering the delicate balance between their world and her own, waiting for the moment when everything might shift. As the evening sun cast a warm glow over the Miller household, Emma stood at the entrance, a hesitant smile gracing her lips. The invitation to Brian's mother's birthday party had been completely unexpected, a surprise that felt almost surreal. Did she belong here amid the laughter and clinking glasses, in a family whose shadows loomed large behind every smile? Something deep within her, a magnetic pull toward Brian and his world, urged her to accept. But as she stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. Laughter reverberated, yet it felt strained, teetering on the edge of something unspoken. Emma couldn't shake the sensation that beneath the cheerful facade, the Millers were locked in a battle with the unresolved tensions threading through their lives. She caught snippets of conversations that felt more rehearsed than genuine, laughter that rang false. It was as if they were all playing roles in a carefully constructed play, and she was an uninvited audience member. "Emma, you made it!" Brian's mother beamed, her eyes sparkling with a warmth that contrasted sharply with the tension Emma sensed among the others. Emma smiled back, accepting the hug, though there was a flicker of something unsteady passing between them. "Thanks for having me. This looks beautiful," Emma replied, her gaze skimming over the gathering. She felt an inexplicable weight on her shoulders, as if her presence might ignite dormant emotions. She wandered further into the party, trailing behind Brian, who was laughing with his siblings. For a moment she marveled at the sight of familial affection, only to be interrupted by a glimmer of something amiss through a gap between the crowd. She spotted a door slightly ajar, and curiosity tugged at her. Quietly she approached the door, slipping inside. The dim light illuminated a small study, dust motes dancing in the air. As her eyes searched the shelves, she caught sight of a neatly stacked pile of papers on a desk. One letter, in particular, caught her attention, addressed to Brian's mother, in elegant script. Unable to resist, she reached for it, her heart racing as she unfolded the carefully creased paper. Her breath caught in her throat as she read. It was no ordinary birthday greeting. The words relayed a shocking revelation: not love, but deceit. Behind the guise of gift-giving and celebration, Brian's father had long manipulated the family trust, siphoning money for his own ambitions. The implications hit her like a cold wave. This wasn't just a family problem. It was a betrayal deeply rooted in their bitterness, and it was poised to explode. Just as her thoughts whirled, voices echoed in the hall, stirring her from her reverie. The atmosphere shifted as Brian stepped into the room, his expression morphing from jovial to rigid as he caught her eye. "Emma, what are you doing in here?" He sounded confused, perhaps even a bit alarmed. I found this," she stammered, handing him the letter, each word weighing heavily on her conscience. As Brian's face paled, the tension visibly thickened around them. A moment later, his father strode in, a jovial smile painted across his face, oblivious to the storm brewing in the space between father and son. However, Emma could see Brian's anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "Dad, we need to talk," Brian said suddenly, his voice low but unwavering. With that, the pretense of the party dissolved, and Emma felt the tremors of change ripple through the air. In that moment, she recognized her role, not just a bystander, but a catalyst in a family drama, threatening to ignite. As Brian faced his father, demanding answers, Emma felt the walls close in around her. Secrets, once hidden, hung heavy as she became acutely aware that every revelation might bring them closer to healing or drive them further apart. The question loomed, unanswered and weighty. Would this confrontation spell the end or the beginning of their family narrative? Emma stood at the eye of the storm, her heart pounding as the gravity of the moment enveloped her. The air thickened with betrayal as Brian's words hung in the room, settling like a heavy fog around Emma and the rest of the family. She watched. Brian's fists clenched at his sides, the flicker of pain in his eyes betraying the anger he tried to mask. The fallout of the letter's revelation had left every person crumpled in their own turmoil, scattered emotions swirling through the dimly lit living room. "You've shattered everything," Brian said, his voice shaking with a blend of rage and despair, directing his ire toward his father. "How can we move on when we can't even talk about this? I don't need to explain anything to you." His father shot back, defensiveness echoing in his tone. Emma could see the layers of hurt festering beneath the surface of old wounds, roots tangled in years of unvoiced feelings and repressed memories. Emma stepped closer to Brian, her presence a quiet strength amidst the chaos. "But do we want to keep us living in the past?" she murmured, her gentle question inviting a possibility of resolution. There was a subtle shift in Brian. Her kindness felt like a soft light illuminating their murky situation, reminding him that sometimes vulnerability could spark healing. "You think I'm afraid of you?" Brian pressed, his eyes burning with a need for honesty. "This family has been mute for too long. We can't keep pretending this doesn't exist." His father's jaw tightened, an almost imperceptible crack in his defenses. Emma sensed the churning conflict within him, the moment of reckoning drawing nearer. The juxtaposition of Brian's passionate insistence about communication against his father's stoic demeanor revealed the deep-rooted power struggle that had plagued their household. She saw Brian shift, determination swirling with grief. He could either lash out or reach for understanding. "Maybe we need to hear each other," Emma interjected, her voice steady, embodying a calm that belied the tempest in the room. "It's time we all acknowledged what we feel. We owe it to one another." "What do you know about our family?" Brian's father snapped, but Emma's heart softened at the glint of uncertainty in his eyes. "I know enough," she replied, grounding her assertion in truth. "I've seen what silence does. It eats away at us." Brian met her gaze, silent encouragement shining between them. The walls he had fortified against vulnerability began to erode, brick by brick, and she could see the realization blossom within him. As they attempted to navigate through the raw and jagged edges of their pain, moments of introspection arose, a chance for each family member to rethink their priorities amid the debris of hurtful words. Unauthorized conversations began to sprout, tender yet fraught, transforming their discourse around the kitchen table into something more profound. "You're right," Brian's father finally admitted. His glare momentarily softened. "But it's harder, don't want to lose what's left." The fragility of their ties was laid bare, each word marking a pivotal turning point in redefining their connections. Brian took a deep breath, the anxiety flickering in his chest, battling against the burgeoning resolve. "We need to face this," he said, his voice low but determined. I have to ask you for forgiveness." Emma felt her heart race at his declaration. The stakes had never been higher. Forgiveness felt both daunting and exhilaratingly transformative as Brian prepared to confront his father deeply about their fractured bond. The urge for redemption layered in his intent rippled across the room. Emma knew the conversation could unravel or begin to heal. As she stood at the precipice of their journey, anticipation hung over her like a delicate tapestry of hope, woven with the thread of fear. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, echoing the timeless struggle for connection amid familial wreckage, leaving viewers on the edge of their seat, eager for what would come next. Days turned into a soft blur for Emma as she found herself lost in the quiet spaces of her thoughts. The world around her faded, and in those moments of solitude, she reflected on her father, a man whose warmth had stitched love into the very fabric of their lives. His kindness had been akin to a gentle wave, lapping at the shores of their modest existence, always offering more than he took. She could almost hear his voice, a comforting hum in her memory, reminding her that small acts of generosity could ripple through lives in ways beyond measure. As she sat on a park bench, sunlight filtering through the leaves overhead, Emma's mind wandered to Brian. In his story, she began to see reflections of her own experience as fractured familial bonds, unspoken grief, and the hopeful pursuit of It struck her how universal their heartaches seemed, each thread woven with an ache that echoed through generations. "We all carry our histories within us," she mused softly, allowing the thought to wash over her like a balm. In this way, she felt less alone. Meanwhile, Brian too was experiencing a shift. His encounters with Emma were becoming the bright spots in his otherwise troubled days. He found a comfort in her presence that he hadn't anticipated. Allowing himself to drift closer to her, he leaned against the cafe counter, a playful smirk on his lips. "You're not just a friendly face, you know. You make me want to share more." Emma smiled warmly, sensing his guarded walls beginning to crumble. "I'm here for it, Brian. Share as much or as little as you want." There was a vulnerability in her voice that seemed to invite him in. "Okay, well, did I ever tell you about the time my family hosted a charity gala?" he started, the words tumbling out. As he narrated the awkward encounters and the pressure of living up to family expectations, Emma listened intently, each detail deepening her understanding of him. The stark differences in their lives began to blur under the gravity of shared experiences. As their bond deepened, a familiar figure from the cafe entered the scene. Emily, with her vibrant energy and watchful eyes, approached their table. "Hey, lovebirds," she teased with a playful wink. "You know, whispers are flying around town about the Millers. People love a good story, especially when it's about secrets and money." At this, Emma and Brian exchanged glances, tension threading between them. "What kind of whispers?" Emma asked, her heart racing with an unanticipated sense of dread. Emily leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Rumors about your family's wealth, Brian. They say it comes with a darker past. No one really knows what happened, but it's intriguing, isn't it?" Brian's face fell slightly, a shadow flickering in his eyes. "It's not something I like to discuss. There's enough baggage there already." Emma felt a weight pressing on her, a looming presence of secrets that thrummed just beneath the surface. What complexities lay buried beneath the surface of this connection? Just as the mood shifted, a startling piece of information unraveled in Emma's mind the next day. She stumbled upon a dusty old box in her attic, filled with letters and photographs from her father's life. Among them, one crinkled envelope caught her eye a letter addressed to her father from none other than Brian's father. As she read the words, confusion gripped her, revealing that during one of her father's lesser-known struggles, Brian's father had reached out for help. Her breath caught in her throat, heart pounding in her chest. The implications swirled in her mind like a tempest. The intertwined histories of their families. How could something so significant have slipped through the cracks of her memory? Suddenly, their lives weren't just colliding. They were tethered to each other in ways she had never imagined. Emma's heart raced at the sheer weight of the discovery. What would this mean for her and Brian? The complexity of their histories unraveled threads that tied them together and threatened to pull them apart all at once. Can we really rewrite our stories in light of all this? She wondered, a tumult of emotions swirling within her as the future hung precariously in the balance. The family gathered at the Millers' home once again, but this time, the air was thick with unresolved tension. The living room, filled with familiar faces, was decorated with fading memories of laughter. Brian felt a knot in his stomach as he glanced around at his family. How did we end up here? He thought, recalling the recent turmoil that had exposed their hidden fractures. The usual small talk felt strained, filled with awkward pauses that spoke louder than words. Emma's presence at the gathering was a reminder of how much had changed. She had been an outsider once, but now she stood on the precipice of something profound, a conduit for transformation. As she caught Brian's eye, he sensed her silent encouragement. She was here to instigate change. "Hey, everyone," Emma began, her voice steady yet warm. "I know it's been a tough time for all of us, but perhaps we could start by talking about feelings? Giving each other a chance to be vulnerable?" Brian swallowed hard. It felt risky to tread where shadows lurked, but as Emma spoke, something about her calm demeanor lit a spark in him. "We're not going to heal by pretending everything is fine," he declared, his voice cracking slightly. "Dad, we need to talk about your failings." Brian's father, sitting rigidly on the couch, met his son's gaze directly. The weight of unspoken words was tangible. "What do you mean by that?" he replied, his brow furrowed in confusion, masking vulnerability. "You've always set impossible standards for us, and all it did was push us away," Brian pressed on, feeling the room's attention shift like a pendulum. "I don't want to carry this rift. I want my family back. Can't we try to understand each other better?" A deep silence enveloped them. Brian's mother shifted nervously, her eyes darting between the men. "Brian, it's not that simple," she interjected. But even she knew the hesitance in her voice sounded more like a plea. But something inside of Emma prompted her to intervene, to guide them toward honesty. "Everyone has struggles," she said gently. "A little kindness can go a long way toward forgiveness. Wouldn't you agree?" The room felt charged, emotions beginning to unearth themselves. Brian took a deep breath, encouraged by Emma's perspective. "I've been angry for so long. I just want us to be whole again, to speak our truths together." Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes as he looked at his father, who appeared visibly shaken by the confrontation. "I don't want to fight anymore," Brian continued. "I want us to find a way back to each other." His father's face softened briefly, revealing a glimpse of the wounded man hiding behind the patriarch facade. I just wanted to provide for you," he admitted, his voice gravelly. "But I see now that I did it all wrong." Emotions swirled heavily in the air, the weight of vulnerability shifting the family dynamic. Confessions began to spill forth, hidden resentments, intertwined with the desire for connection. A floodgate opened as Brian's younger sister spoke up, sharing her own feelings of inadequacy and fear of failure, notes of pain rising as they echoed through the room. Laughter felt distant, but tears began to sparkle as the Millers unveiled truths that had been buried beneath the surface for too long. The catharsis was palpable. It electrified the atmosphere, pulling them closer into a shared understanding. The moment hung in the air until it was broken by Brian's father, trembling slightly. "I need to tell you all something," he started, his voice firm yet tremulous. "Our family wealth, its origin isn't what you think." The room held its breath, the shadows of secrets merging with their burdened past. "It came from tragedia, loss that binds us more than we realize," he continued, revealing frailty amidst his staunch exterior. As the implications of his words began to settle, Brian and Emma exchanged looks, filled with equal parts confusion and alarm. The revelation lingered like an unanswered question. Could they rewrite their story together in the light of this newfound truth? The dynamic in the room shifted once more, a cliffhanger cloaked in uncertainty, beckoning them to confront whatever came next. As the dust of the emotional confrontation settled, the Miller family stood together in the living room, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and tentative hope. Emma, still feeling the tremors of the recent revelations, observed the little shifts in the air around her. It wasn't just the heaviness of the past that lingered anymore. There was a flicker of possibility that felt almost tangible. "Maybe this is the beginning for all of us," Brian murmured, clutching the armrest of the sofa, his eyes scanning the faces of his family and landing on Emma. The weight of his past hung heavily, but for the first time, he felt a sense of purpose. He was ready to be the leader they needed. "Starting with dinner together tonight?" he suggested, his voice steady. "I think it's important we come together, and for that, we need to start being honest about how we feel." His father, James, shifted uncomfortably, the words striking a chord deep within him. "You're right, son. He right, son," conceded, his rough voice softened by humility. "I've been holding on to things that just aren't worth it anymore. I need to do better. This is my chance to show it." Emma's heart swelled at their exchange. It was as if she had stepped into a realm of healing, one where kindness had injected new life into their weary hearts. "You all have been through so much," she encouraged gently, "but kindness can build bridges. Forgiveness isn't easy, but it's worth it." The Millers nodded, processing the weight of her words. The atmosphere in the room began to shift, an invisible thread pulling them closer together, weaving a fabric of understanding, threaded with the resilience they had yet to discover. Empathy hung in the air like a beacon, guiding them toward less tumultuous waters. As they shared stories and memories over a humble meal, Emma found herself wrapped in their narrative. The laughter, although bittersweet, began to unfurl the tension binding the family. Conversations wove through moments of vulnerability, exposing the rawness of betrayal and regret. Yet their laughter came tinged with newfound hope. Brian found strength in their exchanges, gradually emerging as a guiding force, and Emma couldn't help but feel she had become a part of the very essence of their transformation. But even as they forged pathways to healing, shadows lurked at the edges. Emma's thoughts drifted to the unresolved issues that still clouded their spirits, sending a shiver down her spine. Just as this uneasy feeling took root, she noticed a folded letter peeking out from beside her platea letter that bore Brian's unmistakable handwriting. Curiosity piqued. She hesitated before unfolding it. Each stroke of his pen carried weight, as though it held the potential to shift everything she had come to understand about their affection. Her breath hitched as she took in the words, expressions of gratitude mixed with a hint of something deeper. "I believe kindness has led us here for a reason," she read, the spoken syllables echoing in her mind. "You have shown us the light at the end of the tunnel, but perhaps there's more that connects us than we realize. Let's meet tomorrow." The air thickened with questions, suspicions, and an undeniable thrill of possibility. Emma's heart raced, her mind an electrified storm as she pondered what this deeper connection might reveal. She glanced toward the window, momentarily lost in the embrace of the night. It was impossible to shake off the feeling that their lives were inextricably linked beyond mere happenstance. As she folded the letter back, tension coursed through her. What could this connection mean, both for her and for the Millers? Uncertainty beckoned with an urgent whisper, her heart itching for answers, even as anticipation bubbled within her. As Emma read the letter, a tumult of emotions surged within her, each word weighing heavier than the last. Brian's gratitude radiated warmth, yet the finality of his words sent a chill running down her spine. "You've been a true friend, Emma," it read. "Your kindness has changed my life in ways you can't even imagine. But now, it's time for us to part ways, to seek our own paths." The thought of saying goodbye, even in a letter, felt impossibly heavy. She blinked back tears, feeling both recognition for the impact she'd had on Brian's life and the profound sorrow of letting go. What did it mean to be significant in someone's life, only to watch them drift away? The bittersweet nature of their connection wrapped around her like a comfortable, yet too tight, sweater. She realized then that sometimes kindness blooms only to transition into something else, something both beautiful and painful. "Emma, are you okay?" Brian's voice cut through her reverie. Tinged with concern, she looked up to find him standing there, his eyes searching hers for answers. "I'm fine," she stammered, though her heart ached, just reflecting on everything. With a gentle sigh, Brian sat down beside her, his demeanor calming. "I know this is hard, but it doesn't have to end here. What if we celebrate what we've shared? Honor our friendship and the legacy of kindness your dad started?" His proposal hung in the air, hopeful and tentative. A smile broke through her initial gloom, as the idea kindled a spark in her heart. It was a way to transform this painful goodbye into something empowering. "You mean like an event, gathering people together?" "Exactly. It could be a monthly thinkiness gatherings," he suggested with excitement. "We could share stories, support each other, and remind others of the beauty of connection." With every passing moment, Emma felt the closure of one chapter leading to the opening of another. It dawned on her that even as they parted, they were creating new beginnings woven through the cycles of kindness. "I like that idea a lot," she admitted, her heart warming. "It feels right, honoring our history like that." As they discussed ideas for their gatherings, old wounds seemed to mend themselves, blossoming instead into a new narrative of joy and hope. Brian's family had come to see the value in their relationships, and with honesty now at the forefront, the difficult shadows of their shared past were slowly being illuminated. "I'm so grateful for you, Emma." Brian's voice was sincere, reaching deep past the surface. "You've really changed the way my family thinks about kindness." "I didn't do it alone," she replied, reflecting on the strength in their bond. "We're all connected, you know? Our stories are woven together." In that moment, Emma felt a sense of purpose wash over her. She became a harbinger of change, not only in Brian's life, but also for his family. They shared laughter, anecdotes, and plans, creating a tapestry of new experiences to stitch over the old fabric of hurt. But just as the warmth of their conversation embraced her, a shadow loomed on the horizon. The door creaked open, and Emma turned to see Brian's father standing there. Menacing yet curious, his eyes glinted with recognition. "You're Emma, aren't you?" Every muscle in her body tensed as she sensed a significant truth hanging in the air. One glance at him triggered an ancient connection she couldn't quite grasp, sending her heart racing. The memories, the pain, could they actually intertwine their stories across generations? The realization sent shivers down her spine, igniting a glimmer of hope mingled with fear. "Who are you?" Emma asked, her voice steady but her heart racing, desperate for answers. As the walls of uncertainty crumbled, Emma and Brian exchanged one last charged glance. This encounter was not merely another goodbye. It was the beginning of uncovering deep-rooted truths. The cyclical course of compassion was coming full circle, leaving Emma on the precipice of revelation and igniting the spark of hope in her chest. The warmth of the dimly lit cafe enveloped Emma as she sat quietly, reflecting on her journey. Each moment of her past spun through her mind like a gentle breeze, coaxing her deeper into a landscape of emotions she had almost forgotten. The echoes of Brian's words resonated within her. Kindness isn't just a gesture, it's a legacy. She let out a soft sigh, feeling the weight of that truth take root in her heart. Her thoughts drifted to instances in her life where the smallest acts had paved the way for monumental changes. She recalled a rainy Tuesday when a stranger held the door open for her. It seemed trivial at the time, but that gesture had instilled hope in her weary spirit. a reminder that humanity still thrived in the chaos. In this moment of self-reflection, she couldn't help but ask, "Can you recall a moment when a simple act of kindness altered your path?" Emma's lips curled into a faint smile as the memories flooded back. Like ripples spreading across a tranquil pond, the kindness exhibited by others had fashioned her own journey. And now, with Brian's revelations spinning around in her mind, she understood that kindness extended far beyond the moment. It echoed through time, weaving connections that could mend even the most broken bonds. She thought about her sister. And this. Years they spent apart, lost in misunderstandings that felt insurmountable. "What if?" Emma whispered softly to herself, considering how an honest conversation or a shared laugh might have shifted the course of their relationship. Would that small kindness have bridged the gap? Could it still? The potential continued to stir within her, igniting a flicker of hope. This story, layered with compassion and revelations, reminded her that our actions, no matter how small, hold tremendous power. They have the ability to reach far beyond our conscious understanding, creating waves that can change lives forever. Emma could see now that each gesture she offered, no matter its size, mattered. They could challenge despair, spark joy, and indeed transform her world. As she looked back at her path, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose surge through her. "If my story moved you," she thought, projecting her sentiments towards the unseen. Viewers of her narrative, like this video to share that inspiration. Subscribe to join our community focused on kindness and connection. Perhaps together they could continue this legacy of compassion. With the sun beginning to set, casting a golden hue through the cafe windows, Emma realized that this chapter of her life was only the beginning. Until next time, she mused quietly, remember, every small act of kindness has the potential to create big changes, so let's keep the legacy alive. In that moment, she felt empowered not just by her own story, but by the collective journey that connected them all.